Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over an article that talks about Pete Buttigieg visiting the early presidential state of Iowa, where he gave a speech and talked about anti-Trump messaging as it becomes clear that he's looking to run in 2028. Pete Buttigieg returned to Iowa with some subtle and not so subtle messages about what has changed since he ran in the state's 2020 Democratic presidential caucus. His speech Tuesday included mentions of his adopted twins and how he explained to his daughter the different nicknames for the American flag. He talked off flying into the Cedar Rapids airport after visiting while President Joe Biden's transportation secretary to oversee the facility's expansion. And having left the state in 2020 as a youthful candidate not quite 40 years old, Buttigieg now sporting a burgeoning beard. His speech sounded like he was preparing for a second White House bid. Buttigieg gave a strident critique of President Trump's administration while demanding Democrats make their agenda clear and reach out to people who disagree with them. We are being tested on nothing less than whether the United States of America is in the freedom-loving people that we believe and know ourselves to be, Buttigieg told an audience of more than 1,000 in his first public political appearance since leading the Biden admin in January. It was a return to where Buttigieg emerged as a national political figure 6 years ago, when the millennial former South Bend mayor rose among a class of better-known Democrats to finish atop the Iowa caucus in 2020. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders also finished near the top as well in a glitch play contest. The AP did not call a winner, given remaining concerns about whether the results as reported by the party were fully accurate. It feels really good to be back in Iowa, Buttigieg said at the outset of the town hall-style meeting. With many in the audience sporting slightly worn Buttigieg 2020 campaign caps and t-shirts, he said, "Anyone can come to Iowa just before an election's coming up. I want to make sure I got the chance to talk to people I got to know 5 and 6 years ago and the people I'm just getting to know." The combination, rally, and policy chat toggle between questions about the future of the Democratic Party, both nationally and in Iowa, after 3 consecutive elections where Donald Trump has carried the once competitive swing state. A man began by saying, "I caucused for you 6 years ago," to which Buttigieg replied politely, "Thank you." The man responded, "It's a treat to hear someone speak in complete sentences," prompting an explosion of applause and a standing ovation. "I'm doing my best," Buttigieg answered with a quick head nod. As much as an indictment of the first few months of the second Trump administration, Buttigieg argued Democrats' reemergence as a leading national party must come with a concise telling of what they support. "There's this theory that we should just hang back and let them screw up. I disagree," he said. Buttigieg acknowledged Democrats need to revisit some of their policy principles without naming any. But he quickly pivoted to note, "We need to be in touch with our first principles. What would we be doing if we were in charge?" Among them, he argued, was to restore a federal right for a woman to receive an abortion, he said, prompting a 30-second standing ovation. Buttigieg, a former intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve who served in Afghanistan, was headlining an event sponsored by the Democratic political organization Vote Vets, which is focusing on Trump's cuts to federal agencies and how they affect veterans and military families. A number of other potential 2028 candidates are traveling the country in the early days of the second Trump admin. Bernie Sanders, New York Representative AOC, recent joint rallies have drawn large crowds. In Republican-led Western states, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker recently called for a mass mobilization of Democrats at a speech in New Hampshire, and Governor Wes Moore of Maryland and Tim Walz of Minnesota plan stops in South Carolina at the end of May. So make no mistake, this is clearly Pete Buttigieg laying the groundwork to run in 2028, and currently in the race to the White House polling average, Pete Buttigieg is currently polling in second place behind former Vice President Kamala Harris. In the one poll that was done where Harris does not run, Pete Buttigieg is in first place in the primary field with 17%. AOC would then be in second place with 14%, Cory Booker in third with 14%, Gavin Newsom in fourth with 10%. Pete Buttigieg is certainly laying the groundwork for another run, and I think we often forget that he did pretty well in the 2020 Democratic primary for a long time. I believe it was right before Super Tuesday, he, along with Amy Klobuchar, dropped out of the race and endorsed Joe Biden, and it was then, with the establishment support being shored up, that Joe Biden was able to win a lot of the Democratic states and then went on to be the Democratic nominee, as Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren continued to split the progressive vote. As I'm looking at 2028, we're starting to see things shape up and take form here. Harris and Buttigieg, I think, start out as the two Democratic leaders. They're both of the not as far left of AOC, but not as moderate as like Andy Beshear, or you can even argue maybe Josh Shapiro lane. Harris and Buttigieg are sort of the middle ground of being super far left and being moderate. They're sort of in that establishment Democrat wing. But Buttigieg, being a little bit younger and being able to do so well in 2020, gives him an opportunity to resonate more with voters and try and get some of these voters that voted for Donald Trump in 2024 after potentially voting for Joe Biden in 2020 or not voting in 2020. Buttigieg is going after voters like these in Iowa and trying to get them back to the Democratic side. And obviously, we're a few years away now from 2028 really starting to pick up on the media attention, but it's pretty clear what Buttigieg is doing. He's still laying the groundwork for 2028. He's getting everything ready. He's trying to talk to the early primary state voters, and so far, Buttigieg starts out in a pretty strong position. Again, this really all depends what Kamala Harris is going to do. Pretty much in every poll that's been taken so far, except for two of them, it's shown Kamala Harris as the leader. The only polls that it didn't was Atlas Intel and Data for Progress from back in early April, and they showed Pete Buttigieg as the leading candidate in the Democratic field. But even then, Harris was right behind Buttigieg. So Buttigieg right now, him and Harris are battling it out for first place in the 2028 Democratic primary. And now we're going to start talking about 2028 and what the Democrats can do. And make no mistake, he's in Iowa, a state that went to Donald Trump by 13.2% in 2024, and what feels like forever ago in 2012, it voted for Barack Obama by 6 points over Mitt Romney. Now it's a likely Republican state. Buttigieg is in Iowa trying to recruit Democratic voters for the general election, no doubt, but also trying to get the early Democratic voters in the states of Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. I'm sure they'll be making visits to Nevada and such as well. But he's going after the Midwestern voter that helped Donald Trump flip states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Iowa and Ohio in 2024. Pete Buttigieg, there's different Democratic candidates bring different things to the table. For instance, I don't think Pete Buttigieg would be the best Democratic candidate to try and get Hispanic voters and African American voters back to the Democratic Party, which is going to be big in states like Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. I don't think Pete Buttigieg is really going to do well at that regard. But trying to win rural and independent voters back to the Democrats in the Rust Belt from places like Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, I think Pete Buttigieg would probably be one of the stronger Democratic candidates at doing that. I don't think he's the strongest on that regard, but one thing Pete Buttigieg adds value to the Democrats is his ability to be a very smart, coherent speaker and a very good debater. In the 2020 Democratic debates, he did very strong and was able to get a lot of support due to the fact he was able to debate so well and be very articulate. It's possible that Buttigieg would be able to do well on a national Democratic primary in 2028 due to the fact that he can convey what the party is trying to do to people like in Iowa and the Rust Belt and Ohio in ways that other Democratic candidates really can't. So I think this is Buttigieg signaling a 2028 run. I think it's really fascinating to look at. I'm interested to hear what you have to think. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts about this news, what you think Buttigieg is doing, and where it all goes from here. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.